Hello, hello, hello. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Speak Easy number 6. So I am Cassandra, the card reader of QuickCardReading.com, of the Tarot Underground, and this is the Speakeasy, where we hang out and talk tarot. Basically the idea, and I try to teach you something along the way. So today we're going to be talking about what your reading style is, and I've got slides and kind of like a fun quiz style presentation to help you kind of determine what your reading style is, and then that way I'll give you some suggestions on how to lean into that style. And so you might be, other than just a curiosity, why would I want to even know my reading style? And I would say to you, it's so that you can utilize your strengths and you don't try to be something you're not, or you try to like do something that you're actually not very good at. So once we get into the presentation, that'll make more sense. But, it's like, let's say people play sports. Well, some people are better set up to play basketball. You know what I mean? Taller people probably better at playing basketball than shorter people. So if you're like super short, someone might say to you, hey, you know what? You're a good athlete, but I don't think basketball is your sport. Like maybe you should do baseball or soccer, whatever. So that's what the point of that is. So I think I'm the only one here right now. Let's see. No, but I'm going to go ahead and, oh, nope, Julia's here. Hi, Julia. Julia the diehard. Yay, Julia's here. Okay, I'm gonna type in the chat and pin the comment talking about tarot reading styles tonight. And of course, I will be taking your questions with the cards. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm trying to tell people you can have a reading if you want, but it's going to be for a purpose. It will be for a purpose, for demonstrating what I'm talking about. So, all right. So, okay. So what's the weather like where you're at, Julia? It's 100 here today. It's really turned into summer the way it's been doing lately. Like we just go from having like a very cool, wet spring to suddenly it's 100 degrees. Welcome to 100 degrees. So the AC is running. I hope that's not too much of a distraction, but there's really nothing I can do about it because I would die if I turned it off. So that is that. All right. So I can start the presentation here. And then also, if you can't hear me, Julia says high 90s where she's at. So kind of same deal. If you can't hear me, let me know in the chat, because I still haven't figured out a way to like make the microphone stay where I want it to. Because when I switch to card cam, it's a different microphone and I don't know why it won't just stay there, but whatever. If you can't hear me, let me know and I'll try to fix it. And then also, if when I do the cards, if they're backwards, I'm going to try to remember. I'm going to try to point and go, is this left? Is this right? And then that way I'll know what's backwards and what's not. Julia says good sound today. Yes, because I'm on the correct microphone right now. So that is why. Okay. All right. So I'll get to the presentation. Let's get going here. All right. Sharing the screen. Hello. Okay, all right. So we are talking about what I reader. Okay, so I invented 4 styles of readers, and I call them empathetic, oracular, strategic, and eclectic. So tonight, like I just kind of reviewed, we're going to discover your reading style, talk about why you care about your style, how to take advantage of your style, And then I've got some spread suggestions for each style. Okay. And then this is the way I was trying to illustrate, like, if you lean into your style, like this person here who's like playing Cleopatra, you know what I mean? She's very comfortable in her skin here and in her clothing. You know what I mean? She's really owning that style. Whereas this guy over here, the guy from Big, when he grew up, but he had big people clothes on, he felt awkward and weird. So that was my point about why you might want to know your style. Okay, so as I said, I invented 4 styles. The first one is oracular, and you could say that corresponds to the suit of wands. And I'm gonna talk about each style in detail, but I'm just gonna go through the 4 real quick. Okay, the next style is called empathetic, and you could correspond that with cups. And then we have strategic, which we could correspond with wands. I mean, swords, sorry, swords. And then the last one that corresponds with pentacles is eclectic. Okay, so, and then I also wanted to point out too that it's like, you're not just one thing, you know, you don't fit in one little box and that, you know, you don't have any edges, you know, that, I mean, you're going to have a dominant way of reading, you know, so it might be, you know, one and a little bit of another, or one and a couple others or something. There's going to be some overlap. So don't feel like, oh, I have to fit myself in this tiny little box, because that's not what this is about. It's just learning about what your approach is. Okay, so what I'm calling oracular, this is like somebody who you kind of read by the seat of your pants. It's like kind of what we generally talk about as being psychic. It just comes to you. Oracular readers will do a lot of the talking in reading. Like, if you ever had a reading where like they're just too much talking. That's kind of like more of an oracular style, because they're getting the information, they're transmitting the information, they're giving the information, you know what I mean? And so it's like, that's a very oracular kind of style. Oracular style people may not use defined spreads. In fact, they probably don't use defined spreads. They just might lay a card or two and kind of glance at it and then just start talking. They might use very abstract cards. I've experienced readers that use very abstract cards. Like, I'll never forget this one reader. She had these cards and they were just like lots of color. That's all that was on them. And she would just lay those down, you know, and they worked for her. They meant something to her. But yeah, I don't use those kind of cards. So, but that's an oracular reader. Okay, so thinking about it, like, which one are you? Which one are you? And we might be able to do a poll. I'm going to look at the chat. See if I can poll. Yeah, I can do a poll. We'll do that later. Okay, so is empathetic. So with empathetic, this is a very counseling type setup. So empathetic readers have like a counseling vibe, or they may be counselors. A lot of people that do tarot or astrology are counselors or licensed counselors. So you know, if you're empathetic, you might be a counselor. You might have a counseling style. Yeah, with the empathetic style, it's all about like holding a space for relevant messages. So it's you know, whereas like the oracular is like they're getting these messages. There's just something about the interaction between the two people in the empathetic style that is like holding space. And so empathetic type readers will very much feel the feelings of the client and of other people. So like if you you know, relate to being an empath, then you could definitely be an empathetic reader. So that is empathetic. And next we have strategic. So strategic type readers, you know, they'll carefully construct the spreads. They'll analyze cards and their relationships. And I say they might be good at forecasting just because it's like they, you know, they would be able to build like a system or a structure to their spreads that would allow for forecasting. It doesn't mean that any of these other types that I'm talking about like don't do forecasting, but I'm just saying like the strategic type reader might have like, oh, this is the monthly spread or whatever, and this is how I figure out these different things that I know from the cards. So that, yeah, so strategic readers are really, you know, they're very much concerned about which card is in front of them, what that means, like what the symbols are about. They have like, you know what I mean? They're actually, I would say actually reading the cards, whereas like the oracular, like I said, they may glance at the card and then like, but they're not like paying a whole bunch of attention to it. You know what I mean? Whereas strategic readers would tend to pay more attention to the card and be more, you know, actually reading the card, looking at what's on it, looking at the symbols, figuring out, okay, and it's in this spot, so that means this, like that kind of a style. Okay. And then the last type is the eclectic. So the eclectic, as you might guess, uses a mixture of styles and systems. They mix and match symbols as needed. So these are people that can, you know, that combine tarot and astrology, tarot and oracle cards. They might read the cards very literally. If you have a large deck collection, you might be an eclectic reader. That doesn't necessarily mean you are, but just because the eclectic reader, you know, has like a wide variety of interests and stuff. So, you know, they might change decks often because it's like, oh, I'm checking out this now. And now I'm into that. Now I'm into that. You know what I mean? So it's like a very eclectic and always adding things to the readings and new approaches and new symbol systems and all of that kind of thing. So that is what I have to say about that. So let me stop sharing. Okay, I'm back. So my question is like, what kind of reader do you think you might be? So you can put that in the chat. Like, what do you think? What do you think you might be? I think me and Julia are still young people here. So Julia, what do you think? What do you think your style or styles are? Your dominant style or styles? I'm waiting for Julia. I mean, I can tell you mine. Mine is strategic and eclectic. That's how I would characterize myself. But I may just what other people say, because you may perceive me differently than I perceive myself. So, but anyway, I'm not hearing from Julia. Let me go to my next section. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go back to the screen share. Okay. Back to screen share. So this is, oh, Julia finally says, counselor with some empathetic and eclectic. Okay. All right. Thank you, Julia. All right. So now we're going to talk about how you can lean into your particular style. Okay. Oh, and then I wanted to touch on the 4 types of intuition. I'm sure you all have heard of this. The clairs, the clairsentient, clairaudient, clairvoyant, claircognizant. Now, those do not map on to this tarot reading style, but it's also something you might want to think about when we're talking about styles. You might want to think, oh, well, how do I get my intuitive information? So the clairsentient is that's kind of like your senses. Your senses tell you things. So you're either getting things empathetically or you're getting body sensations. and that is clairsentient. Clairaudient is you hear things, and I'm clairaudient. I hear things all the time. I could tell you some stories about just, I mean, it's not all the time that it's like I have voices talking to me, although it has happened. But I mean, just like phrases will pop in my head, you know what I mean? Like, and just sayings or pieces of songs or something like that. And that's how I get my information. Clairvoyant is you see things, images, or scenes. So it's like kind of in your mind's eye. You know, you see somebody like walking through a desert, or you see somebody, I don't know, jumping off a bridge, or I don't know, you see some boat sailing along or something like that. That's clairvoyant. And then claircognizant is you just know things. It's just like it just comes to you and you're like, yeah, I know that to be true. And I get that too. I definitely get that. Like, but usually most of my claircognizant kind of things are, it's about stuff that I would say it's like, it's not like it really matters, but it's about the information will come to me. Like, I remember way back when Hillary Clinton ran for president, like it was very early. And they were still talking about whether she was going to run or not. She hadn't announced yet. And I just happened to be walking across the living room, and it was just like, I was like, she's running. It just came to me. It's like, yeah, she's running. It's like, well, I was that like super critical information? Not really, but that's usually how it happens for me. So just that's the clairs. And gosh, I'm glad I silenced my phone. It's kind of vibrating over here. So it's distracting me. I'm going to turn it over, but good thing I silenced that thing because people have been blowing me up right now. Okay. So this is advice on how to work with your style. So if you have the oracular style, I would say write down or record your intuitive hits or hunches. So like I was talking about the claircognizance, that kind of maps pretty well with the oracular. So, you know what I mean? If you're just getting things, just start writing that down and see how that plays out. See if it actually happens. See if you misinterpreted it. See if it just is always is a mystery. Like just start writing it down. And, in this day and age, there's really no excuse for you not to do it. You can, if you want a little pad and paper and carry it around, you can carry it around. You want to put voice message in your phone, you can put it in your phone. You want to type notes in your phone, you can put it in your phone. Even when you're driving, you can hit your thing and go take a note. So there's no reason you can't write this stuff down or record it in some manner. You could try automatic writing or intuitive drawing, something like that, where you just kind of like let go and just like, yeah, you're drawing things or you're writing things. You can practice blind reading, which people who have been around for a while, like Julia, will know what I'm talking about. But for those of you that don't know, I do this all the time when I have like a question that's kind of like, it's a question about myself or whatever in my life, and I need to be out of my own way on it. There's too much emotional involvement. So I will just draw a card or two or whatever I decide I'm doing, and I put them in an envelope. And then I just put my hand on the envelope and I write, and I free write about whatever information I'm getting from that card. And then I look at it. But what I do also with the blind reading is, and I recommend you do this, is like you have like 3 questions, and they're all ones you want to know the answer to, but that way you don't know which one you're answering either. Because that will happen if it's like I'm doing the blind reading and it's like I already know what the question is, then I'm still going to influence it or second guess myself or freak myself out or whatever. So just mix it in with some other questions. You don't know which one you're reading for because you just put that in the envelope with the question in the envelope with the cards that you can't see. Write out your answers and then you can look at it. So that's if you think you have an oracular type style, you might want to do those kind of exercises. Or if you want to try to develop a more oracular type style, you can do that exercise. And then the last one I put here is start a YouTube channel. It was kind of a joke, but not really. Because that kind of reading is very popular on YouTube. People love that. People love to get on there and get their June forecast or whatever and just have somebody just, blurt it all out, and then they can do with it what they want to. It's perfect for YouTube. It's absolutely perfect. Or Instagram or TikTok or whatever. But I'm just saying, if you have a oracular style, you might want to get a YouTube channel. You might want to do it. So that's that. Okay. All right, the next style that we're going to lean into here is the empathetic style. So I already mentioned that if you have empathetic style, you might be an empath yourself. So for these type of people, it's important to clear yourself and your space before and after readings, because you tend to soak up the energy that's around you. It's all of your psychic hygiene and your clearing of space and all that kind of stuff is important. You might want to learn counseling or life coaching techniques, because if you already have that kind of style where you're trying to advise people and kind of like digging into their emotional needs and that kind of thing, then you might need some techniques, some counseling techniques, or at least life coaching techniques in order to do that. So there's that. And then I would suggest, like with the cards, I would practice naming cards by the emotions that they evoke. So, if you pull any particular card, I'm pull one over here. I've got the Child of Earth. But I don't know, this isn't a particularly emotional filled card, but let's just say I say this one is this is peaceful, you know what I mean? And this one is reliable, and this one is introverted is not. See, this is not my forte. I've done this before where I try to name them and I'm like, that's not an emotion, but you know what I mean? You get the idea. What is the emotion in this card? Not what is the lady doing? Not is she an introvert? It's like, what's the emotion being displayed? So you can name that yourself, okay? Because that's not my forte. All right. So that is the empathetic. And then we have the strategic. So if you're a strategic type reader, I think it's important that you identify what information you need from the client. So as I pointed out earlier, I'm a strategic reader. And so that's why I harp on questions so much. Questions, because I'm a strategic reader, and I need that information in order to read. So whereas I'm saying like some of these other types, maybe the empathetic or the oracular, maybe they don't really need a question. I would still argue that it's better to have a question, but that's a discussion for another day. But yeah, so what information do you need? Like besides a question, as a strategic reader, do you want that person's birthday for some reason? Are you going to do something with their birthday? Because you can do stuff with their birthday. Do you need to know how old they are? Do you need to know? I don't know. It could be anything. It could be anything that you need to know. But so, sit down and think about that. What information do you need from a client? And I would say practice building spreads based on what information you want. So, yeah. So you're like, oh, okay. So it's like, if I'm looking for, is this job going to be a good fit for somebody? Like what spread placements do I need in order to get that answer? And this is for, like I said, if you're a strategic reader, if you're, like I said, if you're more oracular, or more empathetic, and you're just going to sit in front of that person and be able to kind of like read the emotions in the room and stuff, then maybe that's not so important, and maybe you shouldn't get hung up on it. But if you hear me talking, I'm going to get hung up on it. So just so you know. Also, if you're a strategic type reader, I would classify and sort cards into groups, just because that's like a strategic kind of thing to do. You know what I mean? It's like, so you're like, okay, I got my you know, I don't know, like these cards are about like situations, and these cards are about something else. I don't know. You have to make your own categories and stuff, but that would make sense to you if you're a more strategic reader. You would already be thinking, yeah, I could sort these into these different groups. Like something I like to do with the major arcana is I like to like there's like all kinds of like I don't know, religious symbols in there. There's like angels and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, all these cards have like angels and these religious symbols on them, or they have like religious connotations like temperance and stuff like that. So like that to me is a group, you know what I mean? Something like that. And then also practice number plus suit delineations, which I don't think I have ever talked about this. But this is one good way to really work with the cards and learn what they mean. Is we talked about numbers last week and getting your system of numbers, just so you have a general symbol system to work with numbers. Like this is the how you conceive of the numbers. I don't want to say it's what the numbers mean, but it's like how you conceive of them. And if you combine that with suit, then you really have something there. I always say like that's your little ace in the hole, or that's my little ace in the hole. Because if I ever come up on a card and I'm kind of puzzled about it, a lot of times that's where I will go. I will go to number plus suit and see what comes up. And we can talk about that sometime. But like I always say, put it in the comments. If there's anything I mentioned, you want me to do more on that on another one of these speakeasies, I'm happy to do that, but I need to know what you want to know. Okay, so yeah, so strategic, and the last one is the eclectic. So for the eclectic, I would say change your decks as your interests and your investigations change. So kind of like change your decks, like you change your underwear and you change your interests. Because, I've actually had some people say to me before, they're like, oh, you have more than one deck? I thought that like serious readers only had one deck or something. It's like, no. No, they don't. But if you have one deck and you're happy with it, great. But I'm just saying, for if you think you have an eclectic type style, you might need to be changing your deck a lot. We talked about rabbit holes last week, and I was trying to steer you away from rabbit holes. But if you have a more eclectic type style, rabbit holes might be productive for you. You might be going in and out of rabbit holes. So my only caveat there is pick a particular mode of delineation and stick with it for a while. I mean, if you're changing too much, I mean, it's just, you're not going to have any consistency there, and you're not going to like build any kind of foundation. So you might want to just pick whatever mode of delineation you're going to stick with. Like if you're just like, I'm doing it all, I don't know, I'm doing it all based on the planets, or whatever it is you're doing, then just stick with that for a while and see how that goes before you switch. So that is that. Okay, so let me stop here. So has anybody changed their mind about what style they are or style they want to be after that? Did that shed any light where you're like, oh, I thought I was that, but I'm more this? Anybody? No. I'll give you a minute to answer, and then we'll talk about spreads for each style type. And that's where I can take your questions. So if you want to like put questions in the chat too, I can use that to illustrate the spreads. So, but I don't know. I think it may still be Julia. Yeah. I think it's me and Julia. So I picked this night because one night and a bunch of people showed up, and so I thought, oh, it's cool. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not. So, okay. All right. So let me go back to the presentation. Okay, back on the presentation spreads. Okay. All right, so oracular free form, right? What else is an oracular going to be? It's going to be free form. Like I said, some oracular readers might put a card down and talk about it for 10 minutes, before they put another down, or they might put a bunch down and then just kind of work off that. But it's going to be very free form with the oraculars. Empathetic on spreads. So I said, be sure to address emotion, relationship, expectations, motivations, and spread placements. So since the empathetic is very relational, make sure that the relationships are addressed in the spread placements. And once again, if you've been around me, my relationship spread where you have one person, the other person, and what's between them. And then you can grow out from there, but it's that's a basic three card spread. And then you can do one person, the other person, what's between them, and what crosses them, right? Which is what's getting in the way, what's the problem? And like I said, and then go from there, branch out from there. And then you might want to, try out the who's looking at who technique, the directionality, are these people facing each other? Are they facing away from each other? Or there's one person looking this way and the other one's looking at the person? What's going on with all of that? So it's, like I said, it's very relationship oriented. So you want to see how these cards are connecting, and it's specifically the people, what are the people in the cards doing? And then strategic, these kind of spreads can be very linear spreads, timelines, pros and cons, all of that kind of stuff should work very well for strategic readers. So what I mean by linear spreads is something starts here, kind of like how it is in the picture. It starts here and it goes there. And what's the path that gets you there? That's very linear. Take a drink here. Timelines, like I said, what's the timeline for me getting a job? Is it this week, next week, a month from now, 3 months from now? That's a timeline, and those are all spread positions. Pros and cons, I'm looking at I'm either moving to Florida or I'm moving to North Dakota. So let's do one column, if you will, for Florida, one column for North Dakota, or you could do pros and cons of each state. You know what I mean? It's very analytical, it's very logical in the presentation. That's strategic. So, and then my caveat there is be sure to define your spread placements before you lay cards down, because that's a sure way to confuse yourself, is to just start laying cards down without really being really clear about what those spread placements are. And then you're like, well, I don't know. So that is the advice for strategic with spreads. And then for Eclectic, these are the spreads where you mix tarot and oracle cards, you use a pendulum, you cast charms, runes, whatever. You use astrology in conjunction, which I get a lot of questions about that too, about mixing oracle cards and tarot and all these other things. And yeah, I can totally do it. And especially if you have an eclectic style, that could really work for you. For somebody else, it might confuse them. But if you have a more eclectic style, that could make sense for you. So Julia says, not eclectic as defined, only occasionally change decks. Yeah. So there you go. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. It doesn't necessarily mean eclectic. It doesn't mean that you have a huge deck collection and you're always changing and stuff. But it's like you're pulling from all kinds of different sources other than the tarot itself. Or it's like you're looking at tarot from one perspective, and then you're looking at it from another perspective, and then from another perspective. You just don't do it like that are very set in the way they do things. And you could be in a position where you're still figuring this all out. So you can say that too. And then Julia says sometimes the question might determine the style used. Definitely the question can determine the style used. But I'm just saying, just like each of these styles, they may tend to do these kind of things when they do spreads. And so this is what I'm saying. I'm like, if you're not a real analytical kind of strategic person, like and like trying to set up a spread with all these different things, it's just like you're just like, I don't get it. Then maybe that's not your style. Like I said, maybe you're more oracular or empathetic or something, where it's just like it just flows, it just comes. And you're not strategizing anything. You're not predetermining anything. You're not pre-thinking anything. You just go with it, So that's what I'm saying. And the eclectic, definitely, I said creating your own spreads is good for the eclectic. So I believe that is the end. Yes, that is the end. Okay, that's the end of the presentation. So any questions out there? Any questions from anybody about anything I said, or if you have something that you want me to look at with the cards? Either way. Trying to think of what I can talk about while I am waiting somebody to type something in the chat. Other than that, it's very hot here. You can see some of my paintings back here, back that way. I have this door closed because this is an add-on room, and as add-on rooms usually are, they're usually not done very well. So it makes the rest of the house too hot. So doors are closed. Julia says, thank you. Very informative. Well, you are welcome, Julia. Yeah. So I hope this was helpful. Yeah. I've thought about making a little quiz from this information. Not sure what I'm doing. This is all one big experiment. I'm just showing up, doing these lives, hoping I can connect with people, hoping I can help people, hoping I can figure out what people want. So, and once again, like I said last week, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be a surprise all the way around. But if you have suggestions, you can put them in the comments, and I will look at them. So have a great Friday evening, everybody, and